Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 10, presented by Nicolet Law. He's John Kuhn, Packers legend. I'm Matt Schneidman of The Athletic. We got a packed show today coming to you the day after the Packers drop a stunner, quite frankly, 16-13 to the Carolina Panthers. We'll touch on everything from the obvious, Tucker Kraft's torn ACL and what it means for both him and the Packers. We'll dive into some decision-making by Matt LaFleur. We have a guest I'm looking forward to, Ty Schmit from the Pat McAfee Show, coming on in the second segment. Diehard Packer fan himself. Then, of course, we will look ahead to the marquee matchup next Monday night between the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles at Lambeau Field. But I think where we have to start, John, is where every conversation around the Packers starts today, as the Packers got the unfortunate results of an MRI back that Tucker Kraft is out for the season with a torn ACL. And I think you could argue, and I would argue, that aside from Jordan Love and Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft is the player they could least afford to lose for an extended period of time. Tell me why I'm wrong, if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And you're not wrong because Tucker Kraft does a lot of things really, really well. Most importantly, run after the catch. And when you think about it, he was tops in the NFL, not tops tight ends, tops in the NFL at being able to make a catch, break a tackle, and get yardage after contact. And there aren't a whole lot of people like him around the league, let alone on this football team. So Matt LaFleur is going to have his hands full now trying to drive offense through play calling. What I mean by that is he's going to have to scheme guys open so that they can catch the ball while still running, because, you know, we're going to see a lot of short passes, or he's going to have to create ways to get those explosives, because you can't just throw a 5-yard out to anybody and expect them to break a tackle for 22 yards and a touchdown, which Tucker Kraft has done time and time again.
We'll get later into the show into Luke Musgrave and whether we can reasonably expect him to at least partially fill the shoes of Tucker Kraft. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because Luke Musgrave caught kind of a pass in the flat yesterday and didn't break a tackle on. I mean, they converted the fourth down after it. I think it was like 3rd and 8. And I said to some folks up in the press box, I said, Tucker Kraft probably breaks that tackle. So we'll get into more later about maybe how much the Packers offense hurts without Tucker Kraft and what Luke Musgrave can give them and kind of spin it forward. But the play itself is a legal play. I want to make that clear. Sean Ryan had a profanity-laced answer when asked about the play, and just how Nick Scorton, the outside linebacker, the rookie for the Panthers, went for his knees. And Sean Ryan was caught in an awkward position trying to prevent his knees from getting taken out eventually. And just inadvertently, an unfortunate situation where his right foot comes down just below the right knee of Tucker Kraft. And that's a torn ACL. It didn't look good. I think we knew it from the second we heard Matt LaFleur start to talk about it at the podium. And it sucks because today, as we record this on Monday, November 3rd, is Tucker Kraft's 25th birthday. So an unfortunate happening for both him and the Packers all around. We'll get into later what it means for his contract, what it means for the future for both him and the Packers, but just horrific, obviously not tragic news, but a real hearty blow to the Packers, not their playoff chances, but to just their outlook, especially on the offensive side of the ball going forward.
I think when you talk about what Tucker Kraft brought to this team, it was more than just his ability to catch passes and break tackles. It was more than just blocking on the edge. He had turned himself into one of the heartbeats of not just the offense, but the entire team. Coming out of that locker room at halftime, a whole slew of players came out as I was waiting to talk with Matt LaFleur, and you could hear Tucker Kraft screaming in the tunnel, "Wake up, guys. Let's get it going. Let's get this thing." So he had taken more of a verbal role, more of a leadership role in this team, and that is definitely something that they're going to miss going forward.
Josh Jacobs called it a heavy blow last night to lose Tucker Kraft. There's a reason why he was the youngest captain elected by his teammates. Another big talking point from the game, the decision-making by head coach Matt LaFleur, specifically early in the fourth quarter. On a 2-play sequence, it's not just the decision to go for it, although that was what stood out most to me at least, but the decision to throw a screen 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage to your backup running back on a play where Trayvon Merrick, the safety for the Panthers, was in a very advantageous alignment for himself. I'll put it that way. So, John, what do you think of the play call on 3rd and 3, from the 8-yard line. And then not just the play call on 4th and 8, but the decision itself to go for it, given how much time was left and what the score was in the game.
Well, they had just worked the 4x1 to Romeo Doubs one-on-one on the backside for a slant. I thought they were probably setting that same thing up, but
they were.
A lot of times when the Packers get into that situation, defenses know if we can take away the slant, they're going to go to their simple check, which is, we used to call it docking, where you would have 2, maybe 3 wide receivers out blocking for a halfback, and it was just a bang kind of quick screen. And it's not even really a screen. It's more of an RPO. It's just a 3-man concept, an extension of the run game. And, it's just something that the Packers do so often. You could tell the Carolina Panthers were ready for it. That's how they wanted to play this football game. They wanted to keep everything in front of them, and they didn't want to get aggressive until they got into the tight red zone. You saw that all day throughout the game, where all of a sudden they get into the red zone and things start to condense. That soft shell becomes a hard shell, and it becomes difficult to find holes in it, to find spacing. And Packers went to that screen because I'm convinced they figured that screen was going to get them minimum 2 yards, set up a 4th and short, right? When that thing sets up 4th and 8, I think now Matt LaFleur is in a spot where he, as the play caller, is already preparing for 4th down. He already anticipated he was going to have more yards. He was going to be 4th and 4, 4th and 3, 4th and 2, something to that nature, if 4th down at all. So he was ready to go for it. I think when he got to 4th and 8, he just made the call on his sheet that said 4th and 8. I think when it takes 2 scores to win the game and a touchdown to tie it, I think you kick that football there with 10 minutes left in the football game. I think Matt LaFleur, hindsight being 2020, would feel the same way.
And that's exactly what he said last night. Hindsight was 2020, and it was a bad decision. On the 3rd and 3 play, I understand the process of the play call. Malik Heath just didn't block his guy properly, and Merrick just blew up the play. That is not the first time we've seen screens fail this year for the Green Bay Packers. We saw it on the Savion Williams fumble earlier in the game. We saw it late against Dallas when Romeo Doubs didn't block Trayvon Diggs. The horizontal passes, they work sometimes. Savion Williams scored a touchdown off one in Pittsburgh, but it seems, and this is not based on any stat, this is just my eye test watching every game, it seems the screens don't always work, and that's not just this year.
What's the key? What's the one thing all of those had in common? Every single one you just named.
The perimeter receiver didn't block the guy.
And they were in the tight red zone where the coverage moves up a little bit. It's not so soft.
There's less space, right?
And they engage immediately.
So the 4th down, I think that you can consider it a panic decision. Now, I'm not saying 100% definitively Matt LaFleur panicked on the sideline, but there are 11 minutes left in a game against an offense that hasn't really been hitting you with explosives. They've just been running the ball against a defense that has been playing fairly well, not against the run, but I would take the Packers defense over the Panthers offense any day of the week, most days of the week, maybe 5 days of the week, 6 days of the week. My point is,
I'm taking it 7. They scored 16 points.
They couldn't stop the run though. We'll get into kind of the game plan. I know we'll get into kind of why the Panthers kind of wanted to muck it up a little bit later, but you have to kick that. Not only because of what those 2 units, the Panthers offense and the Packers defense, had shown up until that point, but if you make that a 4-point game, the Panthers go down and get a field goal, then you tie the game with a touchdown. Or if the Panthers go down and you score a touchdown and they punt, and then you come back and score a touchdown, which the Packers did, then that game-winning field goal is only a game-tying field goal. It's no surprise that the Panthers ended up winning by 3. It just seemed to me, what I'm saying, a panic decision. That's what it seemed like from a 7th-year head coach in week 9 against the Carolina Panthers team with 11 minutes left in a game. You're down by 7. That cannot happen. Now, I know on this podcast at times you've said, well, sometimes you just get caught up in the heat of the moment and it's football and this stuff happens, but that can't happen, John, from a guy who has been at times one of the best coaches in this league, one of the most successful coaches in this league in terms of wins and losses since he became a head coach. How does that sort of panic decision happen in that moment. And it's not the first time Matt LaFleur has made a panic decision with decision-making or clock management in a critical situation in his tenure here. And it's probably not going to be the last.
What if I told you it felt like everybody panicked yesterday? Just a little bit. Only 3 possessions in the first half. Your third possession of the first half started with 2 minutes and 22 seconds left on the clock. Didn't get a whole lot of time there. Worked down the field, kick a field goal, 7-6 at halftime.
Who's panicking there, though?
Hold on. I'm getting to it. You come out the second half, you plod right down the field, and you miss a field goal. Then you come out on your next drive, first down, you take a shot down the field into triple coverage. It's starting to feel like the Packers are pressing because they don't feel like they're going to get enough opportunities at this thing.
Correct.
And missing that field goal was the instance that they all said, oh no, we need to catch up fast. You get the interception by Jordan Love. You get the first possession of the fourth quarter, and you have not scored a point yet in the second half. I can understand why they pressed. But you can't do that against teams that are, in my opinion, inferior. The Packers are a better team. They have a better roster, but they did not win the football game because they played the Panthers game exactly the way the Panthers wanted them to play it. They never once forced the issue on the Panthers, never got them out of their game plan, and because of that, they pressed. Jordan Love pressed, Matt LaFleur pressed, and I even feel like the defense, who played, I thought, a pretty darn good game, pressed on that last drive when Micah Parsons admitted himself, they hit us with a run when we were anticipating a pass. That is not reading your keys. That's not really playing within the down. That is playing off of, okay, they're going to pass here. We need to take this approach. I feel like the entire team pressed in this football game.
Yeah, one thing, and I'm glad you brought it up, that Matt LaFleur said, is that you can't chase the big play, is what Matt LaFleur said after the game yesterday, as I'm reading my notes. Specifically, and obviously the biggest instance of that was Jordan Love's interception, where they're playing quarters on Watson's side. They try to get Watson over the top of the deep safety, basically across the field, just like they did for his 51-yard gain earlier in the game. But the other safety is playing cloud, Jordan Love said, and he didn't see him. And there was nothing kind of drawing the safety in, so they couldn't sneak Watson over the top. And what Jordan Love said is it was basically like a punt return. Well, no, Jordan, because punt returns happen on fourth down, and it was 1st and 10. So I get that Jordan Love's aggressiveness and his willingness to push the envelope is going to help the Packers far more than it's going to hurt them. But if on 1st and 10, I understand he didn't see him, but sometimes it's better to just fight another day. And I'll say this. I hinted at it earlier. The Panthers' game plan, and multiple guys said this in the locker room and at the podium, was to muck up the game, run the ball, drain the clock, play soft defense, force the Packers to take the checkdowns and short completions all day, and then either bait them into a turnover or try and muck it up in the red zone. And guess what they did? Packers went 1 for 5 in the red zone. They forced a turnover. Packers shot themselves in the foot with penalties and a missed field goal and a failed fourth down conversion in the red zone. The Panthers executed a perfect game plan. They wanted to make that game as ugly as possible. Run the ball, limit the Packers' possessions, and then try and get the Packers to be impatient because of how little they were giving them over the top. Credit to the Carolina Panthers. They executed their game plan to perfection. And as Matt LaFleur said, that's why the Packers got their ass beat.
I can tell you at halftime, Matt LaFleur said, this game is so simple, meaning they were playing soft shell and they were running the football. They were doing exactly what the Packers had predicted they would do. They were playing exactly the game that they knew the Carolina Panthers would do. The thing that shocked me was, if you know the Panthers are doing this, where is your red zone preparedness? Where are you ready for that defense that you've watched on film for weeks show, okay, they're going to get a little tighter in the red zone? How do we puncture the defense when we get in close? A lot of that has to do with the run game. Early on, they tried to run, and they got some holding calls. Second drive of the game ended with holding penalty, sack, holding penalty, false start, holding penalty, false start, sack, false start. So you get these penalties.
And a drop. on the
And then
Emmanuel Wilson drop off.
And Matt LaFleur either loses faith in the run game, or the run game just isn't good enough to puncture defense when things get tight in the red zone. Either way, I was shocked by that. I was shocked that when they got down into the red zone, they couldn't just sustain the drive and keep pushing to get in for the score. Not until their last drive of the football game.
Before we get to Ty Schmit here in our second segment, I want to touch on just a couple things briefly remaining from the game. Panthers averaged 3.48 yards after contact per rush. That would rank third in terms of team ranks all of this season. So Packers tackling wasn't good. They didn't fill their gaps properly. Far too many times Rico Dowdle had a free run or an easy run with, arm tackles or no tackles at all to gain significant yardage. And like you said, there was no instance more glaring of the Packers' inability to properly stop the run yesterday than late in the game to get them into game-winning field goal range. A couple other tidbits from Matt LaFleur's Monday presser in terms of injuries. Kraft obviously out for the year with a torn ACL. Matthew Golden, Colby Wooden, and Aaron Banks, the first two with shoulder injuries, the third with a stinger, all left yesterday's game and didn't return. All are short-term injuries, Matt LaFleur said. He said Matthew Golden is more day-to-day than week-to-week. That'll be important. Maybe they'll feed him more with Tucker Kraft out. Lucas Van Ness and Dontavian Wicks could potentially return this week, Matt LaFleur said today. So having those guys back would be key as well ahead of a big-time matchup, as I mentioned, against the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe when the Packers get some catastrophic injury news, there might be some positive injury news on the other side of that here with a couple other guys this week, John.
They're going to need that. They're going to need to get their guys back, especially Lucas Van Ness, especially Dontavian Wicks, to help them out as they face an Eagles team that is going out on the streets right now. Did 3 trades already in the last however many days getting ready for this game. They've had 3 trades over the bye getting ready for a Packers team on Monday Night Football. They're going to have all kinds of rest and all kinds of new ammunition in the Packers. They're going to need some help.
They certainly will. We'll touch on that game in the third segment, but right now I want to get to Ty Schmit. You know him if you watch the Pat McAfee Show, the voice of the Packers, on the second most popular show in sports behind this one. You're listening to The Tundra.
Let's be real here. Nobody wakes up expecting to need a lawyer.
But if you're injured, you need someone local, someone who cares, and someone who will fight for you. You know who that is. It's Nicolet Law.
Yeah, they spent 17 years serving the Midwest with a simple promise. We'll treat you like family, and we fight like heck to get you what you deserve. No gimmicks, no frills, no upfront costs, just neighbors helping neighbors.
So if life throws you a curveball, remember this. You're not alone. Call Nicolet Law at 1-855-NICOLET or visit nicoletlaw.com. They're proud to stand up for the Midwest. Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 10. John, I know we've both been looking forward to this one. We got Ty Schmit from the Pat McAfee Show on. Can we say the voice of Packer fans on the most popular show in sports? Is that a fair intro?
Hey, you can say whatever you want. I don't know if I love that moniker. There are plenty of people who, tell me I'm way too negative and they don't like my spin on the games on Mondays. But Pat's show is obviously massive. So a lot of people do hear what I say about the Packers.
Well, I love it because would Pat get to the Packers, right? Indianapolis is playing great this year. Mm-hmm. He's got all his important friends that come on the show all the time. Would he even get a chance to talk Packers if it wasn't for you? I don't know. How hard do you have to push to get Packers talk into that show?
Not really that hard. Obviously having AJ on there helps quite a bit too, so it's one of those things where, I think the NFL as a whole, especially for like those type of shows, it's better when the Packers are good. Like if the Packers aren't any good, they're just one of those franchises where, listen, and fans, hey, for better or for worse, overreact and kind of live and die with every single game like I do. So yeah, it's, it's pretty easy to get Packers talk into the show these days.
Before we get into yesterday's game, Ty, where does John rank on your list of favorite all-time Packers, and how far below Jordy Nelson is he?
Oh,
I'll be honest with you, man. He top 10.
Yeah.
Legit.
Wow.
Legit. It's just For a position that doesn't get glorified, I mean, shit, do the Packers even really use a fullback anymore? I feel like it's more of like an H-back now, with Tucker Kraft, God rest his soul. But no, I mean, the stories I've heard from AJ, too, about the way you guys would go head-to-head in practice, I mean, shit, everyone who knows ball knows how instrumental John Kuhn was to that Super Bowl title run.
And you're an Iowa guy, so it doesn't hurt. You like the fullback. You like
exactly.
Defense. You don't like a whole lot of offense, so you got to like something on the offense. Why not the fullback? Hey, how did you become my big question? How did you become a Packer fan? How did that start?
So it's kind of, I'm also a big time Yankee fan. It's my grandpa and grandma.
One of those guys.
Well, that's what people say, and I like to remind them too. Like, yeah, well, neither one of them have won during my adult life. Like you guys won the Super Bowl. Yeah, there you go. We'll talk about that at a different time.
Not this time.
Yeah, exactly. But no, my family has been Packers fans, since I can remember. Ever since I've been alive, and it's one of those things growing up in Iowa too. It's kind of always I grew up around so many Bears fans, so many Vikings fans, and really not that many Packers fans. So, even if I didn't have like the family ties to it, I think it's one of those things where it's like, you get tired of hearing about the Bears all the time. You get tired of hearing about all the Vikings all the time, especially when you're a Packers fan. And it's like, well, we've been routinely beating both you guys' asses for, the last 15 years. So, no, but it since birth was born into it. So my entire life I have been.
Ty, correct me if I'm wrong. And John, I don't know if you know this. We chatted about this a couple of years ago, I think. You quit your job at Best Buy without an assurance that you would even get an audition spot for Pat's show way back when, because you weren't one of the guys who knew him from Plum. So you had to audition, you and Connor, for a spot on the show. So you basically said, hell with selling these tablets. I'm going to audition for this show in Indy.
Yeah, I did. It was pretty good. I had a pretty decent job. For living in Iowa too, it paid well, and but it was one of those things where you're working a lot of weekends. So like you're watching NFL games and college football games on there, and you get a customer come up, and you'd like to just be like, get the hell away from me. It's a crucial drive right now. But it just I hated it. So when Pat retired and put out the bird call that he was looking for interns at Barstool. Yeah, I just quit my job, did a video, got a call back. I think there were maybe like 7,500 submissions or something like that, and they invited like 70 people to Indy to interview for it, and I survived the first cut. Was an intern.
So they had a combine. They had a combine in Indy for Pat's show. Holy shit!
Essentially, yeah, that's basically what it was. And yeah, I've kind of survived in advance from that point and been with him ever since he pretty much started this thing.
What'd your parents say?
I think that they honestly were pretty supportive because they could tell how much I just hated my job. I was like, hey, this sucks. This isn't good for me. Like and I think for what I wanted to do, they knew, like with the impressions and stuff like that, like I really didn't have many other avenues I'd be able to utilize that stuff other than just making people laugh, whenever. So they were actually pretty supportive. Now, if I would have moved down there, drained my savings, cashed out my 401k, and then not gotten the job, that might have been a different story. But luckily that didn't happen.
So it's funny you say, God rest his soul, to Tucker Kraft. Nothing's funny about the situation, but Romeo Dobbs said in the locker room yesterday, he said, Tucker's in a better place now. I was like, is he dead?
Yeah. Dude,
it seems like it. I mean, what was your reaction when you saw that go down in the game yesterday?
It looked like such an innocuous play, right? Like it wasn't a massive collision. It wasn't like I guess his foot did get stuck in the ground a little bit, but I saw it initially and was like, oh, he tweaked his knee. He'll be out. Maybe it'll be the rest of the game, but maybe we'll get him back in the second half. And then you see the cart come out taking it. And anytime the coach says like it doesn't look good, I tend to, you tend to lean into it, but still you're thinking, hey, maybe it's like he tore his meniscus and he'll be able to be back in 6 to 8 weeks. And it was actually on the show today that Schefter confirmed, that he had a torn ACL, and that was the first time I heard it. And
really?
Yeah, my heart just sank. It's like, you got to be kidding me, man. Just terrible. I feel so bad for him.
And it's his 25th birthday today.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Birthday, going to get broke off in the offseason, looking at least a Pro Bowl, if not an all-pro bid for the guy. So the good news about Tuck is, he's going to work his tail off and do everything he can to come back bigger, nastier, and more of a beastie boy next year than what he even was this year. My question is, when you watch the Green Bay Packers, you're very passionate. People talk about you being negative on the show, but that's the way they make you feel when they play the way that they played yesterday. What the heck? And how did they no punts, 13 points. How did they play the Panthers game? I was blown away by it.
Yeah, I mean, you would be a better person to ask about this, but I don't understand how, aside from those first 2 weeks, they don't look like they're ever ready to play. It's almost like they're not aware there's a game on Sunday, and then when the second half starts, like, they wake up and things start to get rolling. But like, even after the Steelers game, that was great, but you're not going to score 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter every game. Like, with how good the offense is supposed to be, how many weapons we have, like, you would expect them to be able to put things together quicker. But it's like, I mean, you understand in this league, it is week to week. Like, if you let these teams you are much better than hang around, like, you're going to get got a couple times. And it's so hard because I think after the Micah trade, there's just so much juice and momentum, and then they play the way they do the first weeks, and it like kind of solidifies everything. It's like, okay, like, this is a team that can win the Super Bowl. And then ever since then, it's just like they don't look like a Super Bowl team. They don't look like a team that could win in the first round of the playoffs right now. And I know the record is what it is, but like, the eye test is just, man, it's terrible.
John, you want to know something? I don't know if it's funny, but LaFleur today was asked about kind of his message to the team, how he gets them back up after such a letdown for a big game next Monday night. And he said, the fact of the matter is we're still 5-2-1 with 10 games left and everything's right ahead of us. And as a Yankee fan, Ty Schmit and I have heard our manager say everything's right ahead of us so many times, and it drives us insane. So I know how Packer fans feel, but there are 9 games left, not 10. So people made the joke that, well, Matt LaFleur already knows that he's one and done in the playoffs this year.
Well, but that's also the thing. Like, I was telling some of the guys at work that today is like, I fully expect them to be up for that Eagles game, like a Monday night. I mean,
100%.
They play to the level of their competition. Like, they know how big of a game that is, national stage. I expect us to see maybe one of their best performances of the year against the Eagles, and that's why it's so frustrating.
It's funny because when I was in the NFL, I was like Mr. Cliche. Whatever I could say to get the media away from me as fast as
now
possible.
Now you're a big bad media guy now.
I was saying it. No, I got the notes from Wallers, say this. The people will walk away like you have a disease. So that's exactly what I did. I just came with all the cliches. But the cliches that come out of Green Bay, especially after a loss, I mean, it's on me. I got to do better. It's all still ahead of us. It gets frustrating because, as you said, Ty, the best game they played all year, and Matt LaFleur has even said, we don't want to play our best football in September. The best game they've played so far was the first one at the early of September.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's the NFL. Every team is very good, regardless of how we talk about them in the media. But, like, to have Super Bowl aspirations and to put on the performance that they did and have their losses be to the Browns. And now Carolina's coming on. I think in
great football team.
Great football team. Well said. I think in 6 weeks we might look at this one a little bit differently, or we won't. They'll lose 6 in a row, and it'll be like, wow, we got beat by a dog shit football team at home. But then you got the Cowboys game too. It's just I don't understand. I feel like they know what they want their identity to be, but I don't know offensively what the identity of this team is. They're just so, Jekyll and Hyde that it really is. We get MVP Jordan Love last week, and then we get what he did this week with some of those just like mind-numbing interception. Yeah, that interception is just crazy, and I don't know, man. That's why it's so frustrating because I think everyone understands how good. I think if this team plays their A game, I think there are very few teams in the NFL that can beat them.
Ty, did anybody ever tell you could be a scout?
No, I have not heard that.
Because this is the honest to God's truth. I was talking with a scout just today who said, man, this is really interesting to watch. I don't know what the identity is of this Green Bay Packers offense. There's scouts in the league that are confused by, Are they a running team? Are they run to throw? Or they throw to run? And how do they go about their business? So it is very frustrating. I want to get into some more fun stuff about you being on the McAfee Show. What is something that was maybe eye-opening to you that you expected it to be one way and it'd be different? Maybe a person you met that turned out to be like a riot that you didn't expect to be so funny. Just give us a story on that end.
Let me think. That is the one thing, when you do this long enough, it's like we've had the opportunity with that to meet so many cool people, along the way. But we were down in the Bahamas a long time ago. It was actually the first time Pat ever met Rodgers. It was for his, they used to do like an NBA, NFL, like kind of golf tournament where like all the families would go down there, and there wasn't a lot of, like, it was basically just them and their families going on a vacation and playing, a couple nice courses in like a Ryder Cup format. And so we went down there, and luckily, me and a couple guys got to tag along and basically just get boozed up on the course the entire time while they played. So it was pretty sweet. But a guy like one of the last day, Pat was matched up with Scottie Pippen, and it's one of those things where it's like, at this point, he's, 25 years older. Like I'm fairly certain he has no idea who we are, why we're here. And, you guys know Pat. I mean, he's playing without shoes on. He's shotgunning beers after every hole. Like some of these guys are like big time golfers, like single digit handicap scratch guys. They're taking it so seriously. And Pat's, 10 holes in, he's shotgunned like 8 beers, and he's still, just kind of bebopping around. And man, Scottie Pippen he was just a riot, and it's one of those things where you hear so many of these stories about him and Jordan and like the way he is, but like by the end of it, he's shotgunning beers with Pat, and it's just like this dude I grew up watching. And there are so many examples of that, but I remember thinking specifically like, man, what the hell is going on? Like Scottie Pippen is over here just cracking up, shotgunning beers, clearly had never done it in his life. And he was eating it up, loving it, and there are so many stories like that because, through Pat's show and working for him, like I've had the opportunity. I mean, just basically every person I grew up idolizing sports wise, like I've pretty much got to meet him and kind of chop it up with him. It's surreal.
I want to ask both of you a question because I started covering the Packers 2019, so I never knew AJ. And one of the funniest things about AJ, because I watch the show pretty much every single day, is how every time Pat or someone else asks AJ a question, he responds with a question. He never answers the question. Is AJ like that in real life, like he is on the show, or is he completely different when the cameras are off?
No, I think he's pretty much the same guy when the cameras are off. He's a rare breed, man. He's awesome. And that is another thing, I mean, obviously I've gotten to know him very well because he's on every day. We see him a lot. He comes in and hosts, when Pat's on location at game day on Fridays. And, if you would have told me like when I was working at Best Buy, like, hey, it's basically going to be an everyday occurrence that you're like ripping AJ Hawk or talking shit to him, literally everything he says, I would have been like, man, what a wild world this is. But no, he's the best, man. And he really is. I mean, Kuhn will tell you, like, he's pretty much the same guy kind of all the time, which is, it's admirable.
He's so sarcastic, and I love that about him. The sarcasm just oozes out of him. In fact, I'll be hard-pressed to think of a real serious conversation I've ever had with AJ where he didn't have some snarky, snide comment back to me. Maybe, and this is only because it's in a meeting room, maybe in the special teams room, but 90% of that shit was sarcastic as well. I mean, the only time AJ was ever serious with me is when we were going against each other, and we had to be serious because we were trying to take each other out. So, I mean, he's just one of the funniest people to ever be around. And, I mean, just to have that on a show and to be able to joke around like that it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing for us to watch, and you got to just be loving every day you go to work.
Yeah, it's the best. And like you need a guy like AJ with Pat's energy and his personality. Like you kind of need a straight man for him. I mean, that's why it works perfectly because Pat, will ask something. And AJ, a lot of times, just seems aloof. He's sitting up there in his attic by himself, doing God knows what. But I mean, yeah, it really is a dream job, especially during the NFL season, when you got 3 hours to fill on TV, and it just having two guys like that. Obviously, Darius Butler come in. Like this year, we have Bruce Arians coming in every week, AQ Shipley, Mike McCarthy.
Big Mike.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy's on every Thursday. He's been great, and JJ Watt. So it's being able to kind of just soak up everything from those types of guys. It's incredible, man. You couldn't ask for anything more if you're a football fan.
I got one last thing for you before Matt asks his. It's when you think about the Packers, and you'll be at Radio Row this year for a Super Bowl. It would be a dream for all of us to be there at the same time. What do you think it's going to take, and how likely do you think it is that the Packers can make it to the Super Bowl?
I think Jordan Love has to play like the MVP of the league, because for whatever reason, with how banged up the offensive line has been, it's not for lack of effort, but Josh Jacobs just, he hasn't been ripping off 150-yard games like he was last year. Like they've really struggled to run the ball. And we've seen last week in Pittsburgh, we've seen what Jordan Love can do. 20 straight completions, 350 plus yards, like that's in there. And it's just, if he can string together, everyone talks about Toyotathon Jordan Love, and how unbeatable he is during that. And the stats bear it out, but it's like starting, I don't know, I guess you would say maybe Thanksgiving through the end of the regular season, like they need him to play like the MVP of the league. So right now, I'd say it's 50-50 because we have seen him do it, but then we see games like yesterday. So defensively, I think they're better than they have been in years past, but it's also one of those things where it's if the pass rush isn't absolutely dominant, I don't know how good the back end is to be able to just completely stymie a team's passing attack like that. We've seen early on here that hasn't been the most fruitful way to do it. They're really humming when Rashawn Gary and Micah are getting after the quarterback, and granted, getting Van Ness back and some of these other guys they've been missing will certainly help. But it comes down to the quarterback. That. It's like when Rodgers was playing like he was, you truly felt every single year like, hey, Packers are, they have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year because they have that guy. So if Jordan Love can be that guy like he's been for bits and pieces of different seasons, I think they'll have a good chance. But, you got to go do it. So we'll see. He's got to play like the guy that's getting paid $55 million a year.
That sounded like some positivity right there, John.
Yeah.
That's not negative.
Yeah. Yeah. We just need to start Toyotathon earlier and finish it a lot later, and then we'll be good to go.
Well, and I will say that's what I don't love is I feel like after games like that is the easy knee-jerk reaction is Jordan Love sucks. This guy sucks. You guys have a quarterback who sucks. He's not as good as Caleb Williams. He's not even as good as J.J. McCarthy. We do Overreaction Monday on the show, obviously. So you see a fair bit of that stuff. But I don't think it's fair to place it solely on his shoulders. I think, he could get some help from other places. But ultimately, we need to see him kind of be that dog that we've seen before, and we need him to just take over games. And I think he is capable of doing that.
All right, Ty, before we get you out of here, where are you at on Matt LaFleur right now? After watching him coach this team for the past 6.5 seasons, recency bias aside with what we saw yesterday, where are you at with Matt LaFleur?
Yeah, it's tough. It's very complicated, right? Because, you see a lot of people who want him fired, obviously, especially after a day like yesterday, and kind of with the reality, his win percentage is incredible, for first-time head coach through X amount of games or whatever. He's right up there with the best of all time. But it really does seem like this is kind of the same thing year in, year out. We've been hearing this stuff about how young this team is, how good this team is, and how they're kind of primed to make a run. But I feel like the one thing with the Packers, especially being in Indy, and this is what I've noticed, if you're a good team, like the Colts, I think everyone would consider a good team. They had a little bit of a hiccup yesterday, but they beat the shit out of bad teams. Mm-hmm. If they're a 10-point favorite, they throttle who they're playing. Mm-hmm. And the Packers don't do that. They play to their competition. Now, granted, does that mean that they're going to play really well against Philly? Maybe, and that's what's frustrating. But it just the penalties. They're so, and I feel like that stuff's on the head. They just feel very immature at times, and that's the easy excuse is, well, this team's so young. But you can't talk about how young the team is while you also gas up how talented they are and how this could be a Super Bowl winning roster. So, like, I think he's been great for Jordan Love, but I think it is one of those, like, the Packers aren't like a lot of other franchises. You can't go, 10-7 and make the playoffs and get your ass whooped in the first round. Like, that just doesn't fly in Green Bay, and it shouldn't. I think fans are, people say they're entitled a lot or whatever, but it's like, that's years and years and years of stuff to put behind that. There's a reason that comes, and you have the quarterback page. You have. I mean, look at the contract they gave Micah. Like, they obviously thought they could win a Super Bowl this year. They thought that was the missing piece. So, it's one of those things where you don't want to play the game, because if you get rid of LaFleur, are you going to be able to find someone better than him? Who knows? But they also, they need to make a deep run in the playoffs this year. They absolutely have to.
I'm with you.
That was kind of a no answer, but I think if you read between the lines,
it's a fair answer.
That was oh shucks, golly gee, I don't know. You can't ask me after a loss. Don't ask me after a win. Just I don't know.
Yeah, that is the Packers as a whole in 2025 so far.
You brought up a couple good things, and I know Matt wants to wrap this up real quick. So most penalties since 86, 87. That's what the Packers are averaging right now. That's a really bad trend.
Look at your stats, John. You make fun of me for throwing out stats. That's a good one. Where'd you get that? Larry McCarron?
No, I got it today from my co-host Rami. And then the other one, the other one that's rather interesting is, as you look at this team, it was built around running the football and play action pass. They're not running the football this year. That's the one thing that's really irking me, is I see them trying to get better. They got to get better in the run game to get everything else going.
Yeah,
absolutely do.
And the last thing I'll say, that the Tucker Kraft thing really worries me, because we've seen Christian Watson a little bit going here lately, with the explosive plays. Matthew Golden, I still wish they'd try to get him the ball more outside of, end arounds and jet sweeps and that BS. But Tucker Kraft was the only guy that was making any explosive plays out there, and it's like, hopefully Luke Musgrave can be the guy who they thought he was going to be when they, drafted him. But, it's just Tucker Kraft was so massive to getting that offense out of ruts and giving them momentum. And they need to find a guy who can replace that.
And I don't think they can, because there's nobody like Tucker Kraft. But we'll see how the Packers trot forward. Philadelphia Eagles, Green Bay Packers, Lambeau Field next Monday night. Ty, thanks so much for joining us. Stick with us. You're listening to the Tundra. We'll get into Packers-Eagles preview right after this. Welcome back to the Tundra. This episode is brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Hey, sports bettors. Whether you're new to the game or can knock out 16-leg parlays with the best of them, the premier sportsbook you want is smack dab in the heart of Milwaukee. It's the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Not only are there over 90 sports betting kiosks, there's all-star dining, first-class drinks, a giant video wall, and more. It's nothing short of awesome. Potawatomi Sportsbook, bet above the rest. And at Potawatomi Sportsbook, John Kuhn, as I look up the line for Monday night's game between the Packers and Eagles, you can get, I believe, the Green Bay Packers as favorites in that game.
Really?
By 2.5 points. At Pato, the Packers are currently 2.5-point favorites against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, so 3 points is what you get for home. So Potawatomi thinks, or the sportsbook thinks, that the Packers are not as good as the Eagles, but their home field advantage could get the job done.
Let's dive into that matchup a little bit. The biggest storyline going into this one is going to be the team that has perfected the tush push against the team that led the charge to get it banned.
Oh, is this the Tush Push Bowl? I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah,
now
I know.
I'm excited.
A couple weeks ago, Micah Parsons, who has obviously not been part of the Packers in years past, when they've, ironically enough, I believe, stopped the tush push twice in recent years, said that he hates the play. I think he watched them run it 4 times in a row inside the 5 against the Giants on Thursday Night Football a couple weeks back. And then he tweeted, "That's not football." And then at his next Thursday session with us, Micah said he hates the play. He said, but that's about the only thing working for them consistently on offense right now. I might come to regret saying that, but whatever. And he acknowledged that the Eagles could just try and run that play down the Packers' throat as a way of saying, you wanted to get this play banned? Screw you. Now stop it. Now, Micah and others have noted how the main problem with the play, forget the aesthetics of it, is that it can't really seem to be officiated properly. And Diana Rossini, our insider at The Athletic, reported this past weekend that the inability to officiate the play properly, if I'm remembering her report correctly, might be what gets it banned in the end. And it was close to getting banned. It fell a couple votes shy, but the false starts, the not ruling the one against the Giants 2 weeks ago, a fumble, it's a disaster. But for theater's sake, I think it would be so funny if Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo just came into Lambeau Field and ran that play, just spammed the heck out of it, just to shove it down the Packers' throats. And whether they can stop it or not remains to be seen.
Run it on first down after the first kickoff return is what I'm hearing. Just set the tone, let everybody know. We're here to end your tush push banning dreams. That's a damn shame that the NFL would consider banning a play that they wouldn't ban before because it couldn't get officiated correctly. That sounds like to me you're trying to fix a problem by fixing something else. If the officials can't fix or can't officiate the play right, why are you not addressing the officials?
I think they have tried to, but it's still not being officiated properly. So who knows what's going to happen with that play? I think it's going to get banned in the near future, whether it's because of, the aesthetics, there's no injury data to back up banning it. So it might just be because of the officiating, but we could talk tush push all day. Let's talk the nuts and bolts of this matchup. The Packers struggled against the run, as we mentioned, and early against I almost said the Pirates. Early against the Steelers, baseball's on my mind. And then obviously
baseball's on your mind and you pick Pirates? You pick
because I was thinking
baseball on your mind.
Hey, dummy, I was talking about the Packers playing the Steelers. So that's why I thought of the Pirates because they're both from Pittsburgh. You should know that coming from Pittsburgh yourself. Anyway, it's got to be not intimidating, but it's a big question for the Packers to answer this week. If you struggled to stop Jaylen Warren and that team, and then really struggled to stop Rico Dowdle and the Panthers, how are you going to stop Saquon Barkley? But the Eagles haven't exactly been firing on all cylinders. I know you love when I throw out where these teams rank in all these different categories.
Give them all at the same time.
All at the same time.
Come on, let's go.
So the Eagles, on offense, yards per game, 24th. Passing offense, 25th. Rushing offense, 19th. But points per game, 10th. On defense, yards per game, 23rd. Passing defense, 17th. Rushing defense, 19th. Points allowed per game, 19th. They only have 7 takeaways this year, which is tied for 22nd, but they have the fewest giveaways in the NFL with 3. Only turned the ball over 3 times. Second fewest, or tied for second fewest giveaways, the Packers with 5. So despite those mediocre or bad ranks in yardage and pass and rush stuff on offense and defense, Eagles are still 6-2. They're going to still try and come in, bully the Packers, probably run the ball after what they saw against the Steelers and the Panthers the last 2 games. And are the Packers going to get up for this game because it's a primetime game? There were multiple guys in the locker room after the game yesterday who said, yeah, we got to do a better job bringing our own juice. Evan Williams said we came out in a haze. Quay Walker said it was a noon game. We didn't really get up for it. If the Packers just play to the level of their opponent, they might go ahead and win this game.
I would not be surprised if the Packers win this football game. I would be surprised and I wouldn't be surprised if they came out and they did the same thing that they did against the Carolina Panthers and they looked like they were in a haze. This team has been inconsistent the entire season. They've played one complete game somewhat, and that was the Detroit Lions, even though the Lions maintained ball control in that game. They haven't played their best football in a heck of a long time. The second half of the Pittsburgh Steelers game was the best football they had played complimentary all year long, and it was just a half. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw anything coming out on Monday Night Football. But that is a damn shame that you said the players had a hard time bringing their own juice for a noon boom at Lambeau Field.
Not great.
That crowd. That is crazy. Everybody talked trap game last week, dismissed trap game, talked about how we're focused on the next thing. And Matt LaFleur even canceled Halloween. Didn't even want to hear it on Friday at the press conference, all because it was a Friday during the season. Where was the focus when the kick was actually in the air at 12 noon on Sunday?
What does Matt LaFleur say? The piss was ice cold, and it's going to have to be scorching hot if the Packers don't want to suffer their first losing streak of the season. You mentioned it earlier. Eagles have been making moves. Howie Roseman's always going to make moves. They traded a 2026 third-round pick, most notably to the Miami Dolphins today for edge rusher Jalen Phillips. They also got Brandon Graham out of retirement after Zadarius Smith retired. Traded for Jaire Alexander. So he'll be back at Lambeau earlier than we all thought. Whether he's going to be active or play remains to be seen. But by all accounts, he's healthy. And he will be playing the team for which he played 7 years, I believe. It wasn't 8, it was 7, I believe. So a lot of storylines coming into this one. Will the Packers make a move before the trade deadline? And by the time you're listening to this, they might have already made a move. The trade deadline is 3 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday. So hopefully by the time you're listening to this, the trade deadline has not yet passed. Matt LaFleur said today when he spoke with us that he doesn't necessarily think they need to add at the trade deadline, but he's confident Goody will be scouring all avenues to do so if possible. All right. Before we get to score predictions, I want to touch on two guys on the Packers and spin this discussion forward. Brandon McManus and Luke Musgrave. Let's go Musgrave first. He looked in the 2023 preseason like he was going to be the guy at tight end that Tucker Kraft became, that downfield vertical threat. I think Matt LaFleur said in an interview on NFL Network at the time that Musgrave logged the fastest speed out of any player during one practice. He was supposed to be the guy. He was drafted the round before Tucker Kraft. And he was the guy in spurts until he suffered that lacerated kidney, I believe in week 11 of the 23 season against the Chargers. Then he undergoes ankle surgery his sophomore season. And in that time, Tucker Kraft completely overtook him on the depth chart. Well, now is Musgrave's chance to show why they used that second round pick on him. We haven't seen much that can give us a belief that Musgrave can become that player we all thought he would be. Maybe it's just for a lack of opportunity, but he'll have the chance now. Only 9 catches for 88 yards on the season. John, what is your level of confidence that Luke Musgrave can at least partially fill Kraft's shoes at an adequate level?
You know, it's going to be really interesting. So much of what Tucker Kraft did was in the play action game from the line of scrimmage, a lot of block and tight end release, shed your defensive end and get out into the flat, catch a ball and truck for, another 20 yards or so. Tight end screens were a big part of Tucker Kraft's game as well. Block, shed your guy, get behind the offensive lineman, run downhill. All those things, I haven't seen Luke Musgrave do. And Luke Musgrave is not as physical a blocker as Tucker Kraft is in the run game. So he's going to have to do that in order to, have the deception in those types of play action game. But what Luke Musgrave does bring is he brings a vertical speed that Tucker Kraft, even though Tucker Kraft was fast, Luke Musgrave really brings that vertical speed. So they could stretch the defense, particularly in the middle of the field. And I think he has good hands. And listen, sometimes it takes a minute for a guy to gel in the NFL. And this being, his fourth year now? Is it his fourth year now? Third year now. It's about time that that maturation process takes place and he can take it to the next level because they're going to need him. No more Ben Sims. He's gone. Him, Fitzgerald, and whoever else. Fitzpatrick and whoever else Goody wants to bring in here to this team.
Could call up Josh Wiley from the practice squad. I think he had 30-something catches for 300-something yards and a couple touchdowns for the Titans the last 2 seasons. Okay, let's talk kicker here, because this is an interesting one. Brandon McManus comes back from the right quad injury that sidelined him 2 games to miss 2 kicks against the Steelers, one short from 57, one wide left from 44, I believe. Tricky conditions at night in Pittsburgh. Matt LaFleur said the day after that game, or he implied, he didn't straight up say it, that McManus was not still hurt. Well, McManus was still questionable for this game against the Panthers. He kicked, it seemed, regularly in practice, according to the injury report and what Matt LaFleur said. Then Matt LaFleur says after the game yesterday, when McManus misses a 43-yarder wide left, throws his hands on his head. Granted, he made a 49-yarder in the same game toward the same end zone. LaFleur says he's working through some things, and kickers just miss kicks sometimes. Now, my initial read on LaFleur saying he's working through some things was that it was a commentary on his mechanics and just working through some misses, working through a funk. So I asked LaFleur today, were you saying he's working through some things mechanically or health-wise? And he said, to my surprise, he's definitely working through some things health-wise. And then Matt LaFleur explained, and people are up in arms, that they went with McManus still, with Haversick still on the active roster, based on what they saw from McManus in practice, that despite still working through the right quad injury, not being 100%, they felt he could adequately go out and kick in a game. And I followed up by saying, are you sticking with McManus? And he said, that's the plan. So, John, what is your read on this kicker situation? Why are they keeping Haversick on the active roster? My guess, my uneducated guess, is that they're going to cut him at when they feel like it's been long enough since that 61-yarder that teams will maybe forget about it and not claim him. Then they'll be able to sneak him through to the practice squad. But what do you make of this whole kicker situation right now? And are they making a mistake by still trotting Brandon McManus out if the injury is indeed affecting him enough to miss these kicks?
If the injury is affecting him, if that's why he's missing, which I don't believe that's why he's missing, I believe that's, what Matt LaFleur alluded to at practice, the way that he kicked at practice, he looked like he was able to go out there and kick in these games. If the injury is truly affecting him, and the only person that really knows that is Brandon McManus, then yeah, you ought to sit him. You ought to sit him until he's good enough that he can go back out there, injury-free, pain-free, or even just the mental side of this potential quad injury and drill the kicks. If it's affecting his performance, then you definitely have to consider sitting him. But what do I make of this? The Green Bay Packers are going to stick with the guy that got him through last year and that they extended in the offseason. They got their specialists together and they said, hey, we got this thing settled. We feel comfortable here. And sometimes you got to go through some rough patches with some players, even if it's your kicker. And I know we got a guy who drilled the team's career long just a few weeks back, but I don't think he's there just so they can sneak him to the practice squad. I think he's there in case McManus never fully recovers. Whether that's fully recovers from the injury or fully recovers emotionally, psychologically to be able to kick these kicks even after being healed from this injury, so they can always have this guy in the bullpen that they trust versus having to go back out on the streets again.
All right, before we get out of here, let's get some predictions for this Packers-Eagles game. I'm going Eagles 27, Packers 24. I think the Packers do a better job getting up for a better opponent, but I just think there are too many ways the Eagles can beat a Packers defense that has shown some cracks, especially against the run. Saquon Barkley has been getting going a little bit, although he hasn't been last year's Saquon Barkley. And I just think the loss of Tucker Kraft, I'm not going to pick the Packers in a game like this until I see how the offense operates without Tucker Kraft, and obviously still without Jaden Reed, without a couple important pieces. And this offensive line hasn't been great this year, specifically against the run, and the Packers need to get the run going against a formidable Eagles defensive front. So for all those reasons, I'm going Eagles 27, Packers 24.
Yeah, I think the Eagles statistically, you read them off, not good offensively, but they still have two really dangerous wide receivers, a dangerous tight end, and a running back that can take it to the house anytime he touches the football. And this is going to be a tough task for this defense, for this Packers defense. And I don't know if they have the firepower offensively without Tucker Kraft to be able to throw a bunch of points up on the board. Will we get more explosive plays in this game than we did past game with Carolina? I think that does happen, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people think here, and I think Philly might just have enough to edge over. And I'm going to say Philly for this simple aspect. If you get a 3rd and 2 with the Philadelphia Eagles versus a 3rd and 2 with the Green Bay Packers,
Two tush
who
pushes.
do you think has the better chance to convert in those game situations?
The Eagles.
Game situations are where the Packers have been failing, whether red zone, 3rd down in games recent. I'm going to pick the Eagles in this one just for that fact.
All right. We appreciate everyone for listening. Thanks to Ty for joining us. You know the deal. Follow us on all socials at the Tundra GB. Subscribe to our YouTube, and we'll catch you next week.